I saw them before I believed it was real. Two familiar silhouettes huddled against the blue-painted gate of the officers' housing compound. The sodium lamps spilled their cold yellow light, making my mother's shoulders shake like a brittle leaf about to fall. My father leaned against the brick pillar, his left hand covering the scar that ran beneath his collarbone, the one from last spring's heart surgery. His breathing was ragged, like a broken radio signal in the night. The wind carried the scent of wet pine needles and the metallic tang of barbed wire. Behind them, my own house was glowing. Each window looked like a framed photograph lit from within, gowns glittering, crystal glasses raised, tables dressed in white linen, and smooth jazz dripping like honey from hidden Bluetooth speakers. I pulled the SUV over. Before the engine died, I was already out, boots hitting cold concrete. "Mom!" My voice came out lighter than a breath. She looked up, her eyes flickering with relief for half a second before darting back to my father, as if to check he was still standing. "Daughter," she whispered, and just those two syllables shredded my throat. My father gave me his old soldier's smile, the one that said, "Don't worry, I'm fine," but his lips were already tinged blue. Why are you two out here?" I threw my field jacket around her shoulders, pulling her close against the wind. Laughter spilled from the porch, sharp and carefree, the kind of laughter from people who never worry about back pain or medical bills. I glanced toward the steps. 3 towering white orchid arrangements stood like soldiers on parade. The front door was cracked open, spilling golden light onto the welcome mat. A waiter in a black shirt slid past the doorway, balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes. I recognized the catering company, one I'd seen at General's weddings. Tonight was supposed to be apple cider I brewed from Mom's recipe, cornbread she baked, and a handful of friends from my unit. Tonight was supposed to be simple, warm hours. Mom leaned against me. She smelled of menthol ointment and cheap laundry soap, the scent of real life, of home. "We just got here a little early," she murmured. "Someone at the back gate said they were still setting up." Dad cleared his throat, pretending it was just the wind. I told her we'd wait outside a bit. Didn't want to disturb. Since when did my father, the man who had driven convoys under flares, who had crossed deserts hot enough to blister steel, wait outside his own daughter's house because he didn't want to disturb? Another gust cut through. My spine felt hollow. I strode to the porch. On the doormat stitched with home, sequined heels sparkled like tiny stars. From the kitchen, I heard silver against porcelain, smelled butter sauce and charred cream. I remembered the cinnamon I had sprinkled into the cider earlier, gone now, erased, replaced with someone else's perfume of perfection. "Good evening, ma'am." A valet in a red coat appeared, smiling like he'd practiced in a mirror. "Guests' cars are parked along 3rd Street, he announced. I read his plastic badge, temporary hire. "This isn't a base club event," I said evenly, in the same tone I used reading rules of engagement to recruits. "This is my home." His smile faltered, then he stepped back, bowing slightly. Someone had clearly told him, "Don't argue with the owner or with anyone in uniform." I pushed the door. It opened an inch, then caught on the chain lock inside. Through the gap, I saw a living room lit like a movie set, candelabras, a fake fireplace crackling, and a huge abstract painting where my father's old black and white portrait had hung just last week. That picture, him at 21, standing proud beside a battered GMC, was gone. On the shelf, giant orchids smothered the ceramic mugs Mom had given me. Voices floated, naming wine labels, Georgetown galleries, prep schools, the right networks. I tapped gently like knocking on a boardroom door. A shape detached from the crowd. Genevieve, my mother-in-law, slid to the glass panel. She looked at me the way you look at an out-of-place statue at a gallery. A tiny smile touched her lips, polite enough to sting. I pointed over my shoulder, my parents shivering at the gate. "They're with me," I said. "We're coming in." Genevieve tilted her head as if listening to a note slightly off key. Her hand brushed back a silver strand at her temple. Her eyes glanced past me, lingered not on my father, struggling to stand, but on the orchids. She reached for the chain. For half a second, I thought she'd open the door. Instead, she widened it just enough for the flower scent to spill out, and with the ease of someone garnishing a cocktail, she whispered, "Not yet, darling. Things inside need to be perfect." Perfect. The word dropped onto the step like ice. When I turned, my father had stepped off the pillar, trying to reach the porch. His breath wheezed, his eyes clouded. Mom clutched my elbow, her swollen joints stiff and cold. "It's all right, honey," she said. And in that moment, I saw her as I had at 7 years old, waiting outside the soccer field in the rain, tin of cookies in hand, ready to walk me home. The storm back then passed quickly. Tonight's storm lingered, laughing at us. A cork popped from the kitchen. It sounded exactly like a deadbolt locking tight. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over my husband's name, then stopped. I looked at my parents. Mom's frayed scarf wrapped around Dad's neck, her knit cap crushed in her hand, their shoes worn down by gravel. Suddenly, every freezing ruck march, every foggy field exercise, every time I'd stood in front of soldiers barking orders, none of it mattered. One instinct overrode everything else: protect. "Let's get in the car for now," I said. In the SUV, I turned on the seat warmers, handed Dad a thermal bottle of water. Mom rubbed her hands in front of the vent, eyes locked on the house. On the porch, a man in a tux lit a cigarette against base rules. Normally, I'd correct him. Tonight, I told myself, record it, file it away, we'll deal later. "I'll take you to the BOQ, I suggested gently. Dad's rough hand gripped my wrist. "No," he said slowly, firmly. "Your home is our home." His words riveted down my spine like steel bolts. I nodded, not in agreement, but in acceptance. In this unit, his orders were the only ones I wanted to follow. I cracked the window, let the night air in. The scent of grass, the faint reek of wine and perfume. I memorized it like I'd map a battlefield. Through the windshield, I saw Genevieve leaning by the window, laughing as if redrawing the room with her hands. In that frame of glass, I didn't exist. If I called base security now, everything would freeze into paperwork. Reports, statements, legalese, but some battles aren't won with reports. They're won with memory so sharp no one can deny it. I needed to see more, enough so that no one could ever call this a misunderstanding. Mom suddenly gripped my sleeve. I followed her gaze. Someone inside peeled down the small photo I had taped by the door last week, the one of me and my parents, squinting against the sun, smiling. They plucked it off like a misplaced sticker and handed it to an attendant, pointing toward some box. My knees twitched as if dodging incoming fire. No bullet yet, but something had already pierced. "Go tell them," Mom urged, her voice trembling but firm. "Tell them this is your house." Dad coughed a wet rasp. I counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3, shorter out than in. I knew the window. I opened the SUV door, leaving the heat behind like a promise to return in 10 beats. The metal doorknob was cold, shocking me awake. At the base, I taught young soldiers, never breach a room if you don't know who holds the key. I stared through the glass. The party spun on, blind to us. I slid my military ID against the crack, not to flaunt authority, but to remind myself. I made an oath, and it included never leaving my people outside any gate. The door stayed shut. Fine, I thought. If they wanted perfect, I'd give them a memory too sharp to forget. But first, I pulled a wool blanket from the trunk, wrapped Mom tight, laid my heavy jacket over Dad's shoulders. 5 minutes, I told him. He nodded. Some color returned to his lips. I walked to the side of the house, crouched by the half-open basement vent. I didn't enter, not yet. I pressed my palm to the concrete ledge, feeling my pulse hammer through skin. 1, 2, 3. In my mind, the floor plan glowed like a mission map. Kitchen left, living room front, hall leading to the downstairs guest room, the one I'd promised my parents. Its doorway lit up like a target coordinate. Back in the SUV, I sat between them, clasping their hands, one gnarled, one swollen as if anchoring a ship. "I'm here," I said softly. From the house came applause, glass clinking, a man laughing excellent. My lips curled, not in a smile, but in control. In the rearview mirror, I saw my own eyes, not those of a wife trying to please two families, but of an officer counting down. 9, 8, 7. The night turned its face like a proud beast. I inhaled, catching a ghost of cinnamon, my cinnamon that told me exactly how I wanted this house to smell. When I opened my eyes, the silence was different. Not the silence of endurance, but of readiness. The difference between the two is a lifetime. 6, 5, 4. I adjusted Mom's seat warmer. Dad nodded, eyelids heavy. I kissed Mom's hand, something small, ordinary. But in my head, I heard my own drill voice, sharp and steady. "Unit, hold the line." 3, 2, 1. I opened the door. The cold rushed in, and I walked straight toward my house. I arrived on a chilly afternoon. Red maple leaves carpeted the steps. A Thanksgiving wreath hung on the polished walnut door like a museum piece. I wore a sand-colored turtleneck, a thin trench coat, and boots worn down from too many rainy guard shifts. The air carried butter and vanilla candle smoke. When my hand touched the brass doorknob, my palm felt as cold as it had on any training field. The door opened with the soft click of well-oiled hinges. Genevieve stood there, hair in a perfect low bun, pearls glowing at her ears. Her eyes flicked down to my boots, then back to my face like an officer checking appearance, except this inspection was graded on class. "Ah, the soldier," she said, drawing out soldier like a trinket, both amusing and out of place. I smiled, extending my hand the way the Army etiquette course had drilled into me. Her hand was smooth, cold, and barely touched mine, like brushing against a misaddressed envelope. The living room was cathedral-sized. The sound of heels echoed and vanished halfway to the chandelier, where crystal rained light down on the portraits of their ancestors. Men in black suits, women in silk dresses, all with the same expression, the certainty that the world had saved them a front-row seat. From the kitchen came the clatter of china and the sweet sting of cloves and cinnamon, drowned under expensive perfume I couldn't name. It pushed aside my memory of home, cornbread smoke and Dad's barbecue grill like an old photograph shoved to the back of a drawer. My sister-in-law glided out in a burgundy silk dress, lips lacquered to match. She glanced at my coat, then tilted her phone like a mirror as if she were studying me through her own reflection. "You like utility style?" she asked, the word utility slicing soft but deep. "Useful, not refined," I smiled. "In the Army, whatever lasts the longest wins." She pouted as if I'd just spoken out of turn. Dinner was laid out like a test. A white linen tablecloth stretched the length of the room, silver polished to blinding, forks and knives arranged from outside in, glasses measured by the inch. A waiter poured wine guest by guest. When he reached me, he hesitated, glanced at Genevieve. She nodded faintly. Permission granted. The red streamed into my glass, fizzing faintly like rain on a tin roof back home. The toasts I expected never came. Instead came questions, no interrogations. An uncle asked where I had toured, which bases I had visited, as if asking about ski resorts. I listed duty stations, deployments. He nodded. "So mostly logistics, right? Paperwork, safe zone support." His tone was the same one people use for children's hobbies. I laughed, my reflex to incoming fire. "Safe zones become front lines real fast when the radio calls troops in contact, sir." Forks paused. No one asked further. They moved on, like skimming a headline not worth saving. An aunt leaned in. "But dear, as a woman in the Army, can you keep softness?" She left the sentence dangling, but silence filled it in. I thought of my mother's hand on Dad's back every Sunday night, of her steaming chicken soup after long marches, of Dad, a veteran himself, adjusting my collar at my promotion ceremony, eyes wet, whispering, "Stay strong, honey, the soft moments, save them for dinner with Mom." In my memory, strength and softness had never been enemies. At this table, they were being weighed against each other like contraband. My husband sat beside me, starched shirt, narrow tie, knee brushing mine now and then like a warning, "Don't bite." I didn't bite. I observed. The way I did on patrol, counting lit windows, barking dogs, strangers smoking on porches. Here I counted raised brows, smiles that stopped at the eyes, words chosen like rubber bullets, meant to sting without leaving a bruise. When the turkey was carved, Genevieve raised her glass. "Our family believes in balance," she said, eyes skimming over me. "Marriage is a merger. Merger as if two people were balance sheets." I wanted to tell her marriage was more like a foxhole, sharing water from the same canteen, swapping watch shifts, sometimes carrying each other through mud. But I stayed silent. In my mind, I saw my father at the end of the table, old cap in hand, coughing softly, asking for water. Only I could see him. Here, the Bordeaux and museum donations mattered more. After the marshmallow-topped sweet potatoes, the sugary smoke dragged me straight back to our backyard in North Carolina. String lights hung low, the old dog wandering underfoot, Dad flipping ribs with tongs, Mom pouring cornbread batter, neighbors carrying over green bean casserole, Eagles Take It Easy crackling on the radio, cicadas singing backup, someone laughing until they choked on beer. No one needed a third fork from the outside in. All I had to do was hold out my hand and someone put a hot biscuit in it. "So how long do you plan to serve?" my sister-in-law asked, swirling her wine. "Or is it time to think about family?" "Her family, not mine," I answered steady. "In the Army, family is the people you protect. I think of them every day." She smiled, meaning textbook response. Conversation slid toward Georgetown art galleries, Aspen ski trips, fundraisers. They invited me to ski. I said my winter duty roster was tighter than a hospital ER schedule. The table chilled like ice. Genevieve sighed. "Oh dear," an uncle leaned close. "But you can drive a snowmobile, right?" "I drive Humvees through mud and MRAP over minefields," I replied. He chuckled politely. "Well then, a snowmobile should be easy." When I offered to help clear the table, Genevieve's hand touched my wrist, light but commanding. Guests don't do chores, especially special guests. Special dropped like an ice cube down my sleeve. I stepped back into the living room, staring at the black-and-white wedding portrait of her in-laws. Hope beamed from their eyes. I wondered what kind of future they'd imagined and whether it had room for a daughter-in-law in uniform. I caught my husband in the hallway, adjusting his cufflinks, gaze sliding away. "They just need time," he whispered. I glanced at his watch, the second hand gliding smooth. Time. Out in the field, 60 seconds meant saving a man or losing a squad. Here, time was code for don't hope. Before we left, Genevieve handed me a small ribboned box. "A little adjustment," she said. Inside lay leather gloves perfectly stitched. To balance the army jacket, she added with a thin smile. "Soften the edges." I thanked her, slipped them on. Smooth, cold leather gripped my fingers, snug, suffocating. She tilted her head. "See, softer." Softer, meek, less me. Outside, night air shoved pine into my lungs. The moon hung sharp over the oak trees, a blade of silver. My husband opened the car door, his hand pressing lightly at my back the way he had going in. I sat, glancing through the window. Genevieve stood framed in the doorway, frozen, clutching her glass of wine. A servant dimmed the lights, leaving the room in a weary golden haze. I felt like I'd just walked out of a museum, where every item had a plaque, a value, a context. Only I had no plaque. no catalog, just a shadow in the corner. We drove past manicured lawns and stone houses. At a red light, I studied my hand in the dash glow, the calluses, the tiny scar under my nail from rope burns and rifle drills. Dad's voice echoed, "You don't need to fit anyone's mold. You just need to finish your road." I turned to my husband. "Next time," I said, "I'll cook my food, invite them to our place." He nodded too quickly, but his eyes sagged. "We'll see Mom's schedule first," he said. My plan, already floating, was tethered to her calendar like a balloon stuck to the ceiling. Back on base, I swung by the 24-hour commissary for apples, cinnamon, chocolate chips. In the officers' quarters kitchen, the oven creaked as I pulled out a tray. Cinnamon rose fast, chasing their perfume out of my nose. When the apple pie cooled, I packed a box, labeled it for later. Later, I imagined they'd sit in my home, taste my pie, sip my cider, and know its smell. Later turned to never faster than I expected. At 1:13 a.m., a text buzzed, "Thanks for coming," from my husband. Another followed from Genevieve, "Tonight progress. We'll keep working on your integration." I laughed soundlessly at the word working. Integration, like plugging new data into an old system. I shut off the screen, laid the phone face down. The heater hummed like a midnight C-130 engine. I closed my eyes, replaying the living room, the ancestors' portraits, the chandelier raining light. And in the corner I saw myself, small but upright, out of place but unbent. A quiet line scrolled across my mind, map the terrain, mark the exits, record the voices, because I knew tonight's field was just the prologue to tomorrow's campaign. By morning, before reporting to duty, I carried the pie to the unit office. Set it on the table with a note, "Eat up, long march ahead." Butter and sugar flooded the room like a warm flag. A first-year sergeant bit in, eyes lighting up. "Ma'am, this tastes like home." I smiled. "Yeah, home." Here, no one asked which fork to use. Here, everyone knew cinnamon could rescue a bad morning. Months later, the night I pulled up to my own house and saw my parents left outside in the cold, the yellow lights brushing their gray hair, the memory of that Thanksgiving came back sharp as a map light. I understood then. It hadn't started with that locked door. It started with that long white tablecloth, with the words "marriage is a merger," with leather gloves meant to soften, with every we'll see Mom's schedule, with the way they taught me cinnamon only belonged in a servant's kitchen. And because I had mapped the terrain, I knew exactly what to do when the real battle began. My father built the table from white oak. He chose boards with straight grain, soft ripples like the back of a fish in the creek behind our house. "A dinner table is where a family holds roll call every day," he said. I laughed, told him roll call sounded like a briefing. He winked. "Exactly." Mom held the steel ruler, marking screw holes. The shop smelled of sawdust and linseed oil while Wichita linemen crackled on the radio, the guitar line a silver thread stretched across winter. After night shifts, I'd stop by the workshop, sit on a crate, watch him saw plain and fit joints so tight no screws showed. Mom polished with beeswax until the surface glowed like warm cocoa. "Our wedding gift," she said, her calloused hand resting on the edge. "So you'll have a place to set dinner, whether it's ramen or steak." I hugged them both, soaking in the sweat, the cheap soap, the scent of home that burned my eyes. When delivery day came, Dad wrapped the table in his Old Navy blanket, secured it with rubber straps knotted like bandages. He drove the pickup slow, as if hauling explosives. Mom rode shotgun with a jar of polish and rags. I followed in my SUV, pulse racing like leading a convoy back through the gate. At the checkpoint, the MP saluted. Dad nodded back, still a soldier, even retired. We carried it up the porch. My husband loosened his tie, greeting us. "Wow, that's a lot of work," he said, eyes skimming the covered bundle. Genevieve was already in the doorway, porcelain cup in hand, gaze sharp, labeling everything she saw. My sister-in-law padded barefoot across the marble, snapping phone pics for her story. Caption, farmhouse vibes. Easy heavy, Dad joked, sweat sliding down the faint scar on his collarbone. He and I lifted one end. My husband and a valet grabbed the other. Inside, the dining room glared with glass and crystal. A borrowed glass table already staged on a Persian rug, mother-of-pearl chairs lined up, chandelier dripping gold. We just rearranged. My sister-in-law chirped like unveiling a design concept. We set the oak table down. Dad pulled the blanket away, revealing wood smooth as water. Mom handed me the oil. I wiped a long stroke across the grain, clearing years of road dust and polishing their pride into the room. Dad tapped a coin on the edge, listening for the crisp ting. His private test. I looked at my husband, waiting for his smile, his "it's beautiful." He smiled briefly, then looked at his mother. Genevieve cleared her throat. "Well, handmade," she said, stopping there, a compliment coated in vinegar. "The problem is this house follows a transitional chic theme. Oak is rustic, and," she tapped the edge, "no protective finish. Glass rings will stain." My sister-in-law squealed, "Cool, like an artisan cafe," but her eyes sparkled at the flaw. "Dad sealed it with beeswax," I said, my voice steady like reading orders. Dad nodded, meeting Genevieve's stare, calm as if facing an inspector. "You could set a glass here," he said, rough voice firm. "This table's built for long meals and hard conversations." He smiled faintly, one of his shop jokes. My husband tugged a chair. "Maybe we leave it here for now." Genevieve's smile thinned. "For now, sure. Tonight we're hosting a tasting. The glass table fits champagne flutes and silver sets. This one," her hand pressed the oak like a doctor with a stethoscope. "Better store it downstairs. Wouldn't want scratches." Store it downstairs, 3 words, but it felt like being marked absent at roll call. Dad's knuckles whitened. I saw the raw crack on his finger from the strap he'd tied. I stepped forward. "This table is a wedding gift," I said, each word like a gavel. "It's where my family and I will eat." My sister-in-law snickered. "Not really the aesthetic." Genevieve didn't laugh. She looked at my husband. He exhaled, nodded to the valet. "Help me move it to the basement." His words locked the door I tried to open. The sound of saws and hammers and Mom's laughter rang in my ears like bees trapped in a jar. We carried it down the hall reeking of orchids into the cool basement. Plastic tubs labeled winter decor, china fragile, a fake Christmas tree wrapped in nylon. My husband said, "Just here for now," setting it against the wall near a dehumidifier. The blanket lay crumpled like a discarded uniform. Dad picked it up, brushed off dust, and spread it carefully over the table again, slow, exact, like folding a flag. Upstairs, Genevieve straightened orchids on the glass table. "Much better," she said. My sister-in-law checked her phone. "The limo just said arrives in time, Mom." I felt like merchandise shuffled off-season. Mom tugged my sleeve, whispering, "It's okay, honey. I'll polish it tomorrow." Her fingernails still stained with beeswax. To me, it was a medal. To them, dirt. That night, when the house quieted, I went back down. Dad came too, Mom with a box of wipes. We flicked on the harsh neon. The table sat there, silent, a ship hauled ashore. I placed my hand on the wood, the beeswax smell pulling me back to the workshop. Dad chuckled. "That corner joint, I cut it twice, missed the first by half an inch." He smiled like a craftsman who fixes errors with patience, not excuses. I told him, "One day it'll be in the right place." He nodded, eyes tracing a faint glimmer along the grain like a horizon line. Weeks later, I found the basement empty. The table was gone. My husband scratched his head. "Mom sent it to a consignment warehouse, better storage than damp air. A soldier reassigned for unit efficiency." I asked for the address. He stalled. A text came, "Don't worry, it's safe with a friend." I replied, "That was our wedding gift." Period. No response. That night I called Dad. He answered fast, as if waiting. I told him. Silence then. "I'll make you a bench, kiddo. Think of the table as landing on the wrong airstrip. The pilot will circle back." I laughed through tears. "Dad, everything's a radio call with you. Because I don't want you to think this mission ends in a basement," he said. Days later, I drove to the warehouse. Rows of cages labeled in Sharpie. I found the tag. Inside, Louis chairs, mahogany cabinets, a gold-framed mirror, and my table, half covered by a dirty tarp. A fresh scratch scored its leg, one that hadn't been there before. My throat tightened. The smell of mold mixed with beeswax like running PT in gas mask. I peeled the tarp back, pulled a microfiber cloth from my uniform pocket, and polished the scar the way I'd polish a rank pin. The manager asked if I needed help. I shook my head. He watched me press both palms to the surface, not like a shopper, but like a soldier saluting a comrade left behind. Back home, I told my husband I wanted the table returned. "The glass one fits the concept," he said. "What concept defines family dinners?" I shot back. He had no answer. He dialed his mother. I heard her voice tinny on speaker. "Don't make this a big deal." Big deal. The words clinked like a glass on unsteady wood. I texted Dad, "The table's fine. I'll bring it home." Attached a photo, the warehouse, lights streaking across its surface like a runway. At Genevieve's menu tasting, house party, the glass table stood center stage, orchids aligned, napkins folded into fans. I brewed apple cider in the kitchen, cinnamon filling the air, trying to drown the orchid chill. Genevieve paused, sniffed. "Cozy scent, but tonight the fragrance is orchid." I shut off the burner, watched the steel cool to dull. I thought of the table alone in the warehouse, of Dad's bleeding hand, of meals without 3 forks but full of laughter. And I understood the gift wasn't wood. It was the reminder. Home is where people sit together. When someone banishes your table to a basement, they're banishing your home. The humiliation of that gift seeped into every event afterward, an underground current. At lunches with my husband's friends, they praised Genevieve's taste and called us stylish. Someone asked why our house lacked a personal touch. I joked, "My personal touch is deployed elsewhere." They didn't get it. My husband pretended not to hear. Until the night I pulled up to my gate and saw my parents shivering outside, yellow light warming the strangers inside. I knew the table had come back. Not in oak, but in the moment I would sit my parents at it, pour cider, and declare an end to every concept that left them out. After visiting the warehouse, I kept a scrap Dad had trimmed from the table's edge. I sanded it smooth, rubbed it with wax, drilled a hole, threaded leather, hung it from my key ring. Every time I touched it, I smelled beeswax and linseed, heard saws and Mom's laughter. It stayed with me on field training in the SUV that night as I counted down. 9, 8, 7, that scrap was a pocket order. Hold course. I closed my eyes, repeated it. Hold course. When I opened them, I was ready to reclaim the table, not just as furniture, but as the rightful seat of my parents in the house that bore my name. When I signed my re-enlistment papers, the S1 office smelled of fresh paper and printer ink, the AC humming like the tent fans from deployment. The personnel sergeant slid a thick yellow folder across. "Your LES will reflect the bonus within 30 business days, ma'am." I nodded. The ballpoint scratched the page like a safety lever clicking into place. Out in the hall, the LED board flickered names of soldiers waiting for new CACs. I tucked the file under my arm and stepped into sunlight, feeling like I'd just closed a deal with my own future. Not glamorous, but steady. That afternoon, I sat at a coffee shop outside the gate with my old LES, a VA loan worksheet, and a smudged Zillow list. Steam rose from my Americano. In the margin, I scribbled, ground floor room for Mom and Dad, no stairs. Since Dad's heart surgery, stairs were the enemy. I called my husband. Let's check houses this weekend. He was busy, but sent me a link. Top neighborhoods, old money prefers these zip codes. I sighed. Old money liked gates. My heart wanted a flat backyard path where Dad could peel apples in a lawn chair. We toured houses on Saturday. Heat shimmered on asphalt, grass crisp and dry. The first had steep steps and a shower stall like an obstacle course crossed it off. The second looked like a magazine spread, glossy wood floors, marble island, star-like pendant lights. But the so-called main floor office had glass doors, useless for Mom's arthritis naps. The third, perfect. The door opened straight into a small bedroom with a window to a wide oak, bathroom with steel grab bars, steps so low my combat boots cleared them without lifting knees. I opened the window. Dry leaves and oak wood drifted in. Sparrows chattered. I saw it mapped clear as an ops order. Dad in the chair, Mom making tea, the bench he built against the wall, and one day, the oak table restored in the dining room where no one could touch it again. At the offer stage, the realtor's voice swelled like an auctioneer. I laid down the VA pre-approval, firm on the timeline. That night in the BOQ kitchen, laptop open, I balanced bonus money against down payment, roof repairs. My husband walked in, tie half off, scrolling his group chat. I think it looks better if I'm on the deed too. Keeps the image right. Everyone knows it's both of us. His eyes never met mine. On my spreadsheet, my line read 80% contribution. I wanted to say, whose image? Who carries Dad upstairs if his chest seizes? Instead, I shut the laptop. Fine, 50/50, but one condition. His head snapped up like I'd said audit. The ground floor room is my parents', untouchable. No one repurposes it. No one reconcepts it. We signed on a Tuesday morning. My signature dug into the page like an anchor cable biting dirt. He signed too, grinning at the notary like it was our second wedding. The keys dropped into my hand, cold metal, jagged teeth flashing. I slid them onto the ring where I already kept the scrap of oak Dad had trimmed from the wedding table. Beeswax lingered. I swore I heard his saw. Home, I whispered. The word warmed the coffee cup until condensation slid like sweat. Moving day, my squad rolled in. Johnson hauled a box of books. Ma'am, who's reading all this? I laughed. No one, they're just for show. Chili simmered, cornbread baked, pans clattered. I taped a sign on the downstairs door, Mom and Dad's room. That night I FaceTimed Mom. Her eyes shone. This room's nicer than our first house. Dad tested the grab bar. Worth every penny. A week later, my sister-in-law texted, Sunday brunch, new neighbor's place. Come. I went still believing soft chairs and mimosas could soften stares. Brunch was an audition for honorary citizenship in their zip code. Nantucket vacations, gala fundraisers. Genevieve lifted her wrist, glass poised. To the new house, she said. We'll help you refine it. My sister-in-law tilted her head. Are you keeping transitional or leaning farmhouse? I held my water glass, thought of steel grab bars of beeswax. My concept is, my parents can walk in and sit down without pain. Polite laughter clinked off linen like sugar grains that wouldn't dissolve. After waffles, my sister-in-law tugged me onto the balcony, handing me her phone like classified intel. Screenshots of their family chat. A cousin's line, don't let them have keys. Old people are messy, she smirked. I don't care, just logistics. Then leaned in, bergamot perfume cold on my wrist. I'll be honest, never give them keys. Once they are in, they won't leave. Servants, ambulances, salesmen, not the right vibe. Protect the image. She winked like passing down a secret daughter-in-law code. That night I placed the key ring in my palm. The oak scrap warmed. I stepped onto the porch, locking and unlocking the front door over and over like a rifle drill. Locks are for security, not filtering family. I texted Mom, "I'll give you keys. Anytime you come, walk in." Her scene popped up instantly, then she called, her face glowing in kitchen light. "Don't let anyone tell you love is by appointment," she said. I spun the keys on my finger. The metal said correct. When the bonus hit my account, I paid early on the roof and bars, set the rest aside in savings. The banker asked what to name the fund. The glass reflected my uniform. "Freedom Fund," I said. Freedom means no one waits outside for permission to live. Then came the congrats dinner at our place. They swarmed like an inspection team, orchids planted in every corner. I simmered cider, cinnamon blanketing the air. Genevieve stepped in, frowned at the black pot, and turned off the burner as if by accident. "Tonight the scent is orchid," she said. My sister-in-law paced, snapping before-after photos, talking flow redesign. I reminded them. "The downstairs stays. My parents are coming next weekend." Genevieve lifted her chin. "Oh, not concerned scheduling. Sunday we're hosting a tasting with a curator. When they come, mind the shoes." I swallowed the reply that would have turned the night into a field exercise. After the crowd left, my husband and I washed dishes. Soap bubbles glistened like stars. "I know you obsess over keys," he said, "but Mom, her event planning is like a class." I dried my hands. "And my parents' climbing steps is cardiac rehab." He flinched, apologized for the metaphor, then offered a solution. "Have them call 24 hours ahead. Someone will welcome them classy." Classy. Dad, the man who once stopped in a storm to push a stranger's truck, would need an appointment to enter my house. Next day I drove to my parents', pressed the spare into Dad's calloused hand. "Your key." His eyes lit like I just scored perfect at the range. Mom hugged me, smelling of cheap detergent. They didn't ask, "Is this right?" Didn't say, "We'll bother people." They only said, "Call when you need us." On the way back, I stopped at a hardware store, had another key cut. The clerk asked what to engrave. "Home room down," I said. He nodded. "Short line, it'll fit." "That's enough," I smiled. But my sister-in-law's warning perched on my mind like a blackbird on a power line. I started noticing things. A locksmith's business card, forgotten on the counter after a tasting. A valet list labeled just in case. Her casual quip, "Smart locks swap in 15 minutes. They didn't trigger me that night, but they mapped out a quiet raid on my boundary. One Friday, patching a rain jacket on the porch, my husband handed me a printed email. Maintenance schedule, lock upgrade proposal. Vendor I'd never hired. "Mom suggested more security," he said. Needle paused in my fingers. "Security for who?" The question hung. Some locks protect, some locks filter, and some doors aren't locked at all, just guarded by someone inside deciding who's the right vibe. That night I set my oak scrap on the nightstand, thought of the words, "Never give them keys," realized it wasn't about theft. It was about control of the narrative. In their story, my parents were props: visit, smile, leave. In mine, they were co-stars. Between those stories stood a lock. Months later, when I pulled up to my house and saw my parents left outside in the cold, all the timelines stacked like a command string. Bonus purchase. Ground floor room, Dad holding the key, balcony warning, locksmith card, upgrade email, orchids smothering cinnamon. I didn't need to ask why my key didn't work. I remembered exactly who said, 15 minutes to change a lock. From part 1 till now, I'd stayed classy. In part 4, I wrote my own after-action review. Objectives, resources, risks, early signs. I closed it with one line, "Next time, no warning." Action. I touched the oak scrap on my key ring, warm as a heartbeat. My voice, officer steady, read the order, hold the house, hold the people. The image of that dinner table still haunts me. The chandelier blazing overhead, the smell of roasted meat lingering, crystal glasses chiming in delicate rhythm. But instead of reunion, it became a tribunal. My parents sat freezing outside while I was the defendant on trial at the center of their feast. Genevieve raised her wine glass, gaze circling until it landed on me. "Perhaps we should be honest," she began, voice even but cutting. "Some people are born for military life. That doesn't mean they belong as daughters-in-law in a distinguished family." Silence, only the crackle of candle wicks. My hand tightened around the fork until my fingers trembled. On the wall, their family portrait shimmered under the light, reminding me I'd never be framed within it. My sister-in-law snickered, her laugh slicing like glass. "Do you know what people whisper outside? That our family has been far too generous, taking in a soldier girl." She lingered on the words, dripping with disdain. I swallowed hard, eyes drifting to my husband. He kept his head down, cutting meat. He never looked up. His silence burned worse than their insults. Suddenly, I thought of mess hall dinners. Soldiers hunched over dented trays, sharing cookies, splitting hot sauce packets. Camaraderie was our shield. Here, under chandeliers, I was abandoned like a lone outpost. An uncle leaned forward, pouring fuel on the fire. "Have you considered leaving the army? Devote yourself to being a wife, a mother. A man doesn't need a female officer beside him. He needs a woman who stays home, obedient." My chest constricted. Every eye bore into me, waiting. I breathed deep, reminding myself I'd stood firm under gunfire, commanded troops through rain of steel. But the words at this table scorched deeper than bullets. I set my fork down. Metal rang sharp against oak. My voice shook but carried. "I swore to defend this flag. I've guarded the sleep of every one of you, and tonight my parents are shivering outside while you sip wine. Tell me who here understands honor." The room ruptured. A cough here, a shake of the head there, but no ally. Genevieve placed her glass down, her face frost. "True honor, dear, is knowing your place, and clearly you're in the wrong seat." Her words were the kill shot. My face drained, ears roared. I knew then this wasn't just a failed dinner, it was a declaration of war. They wanted me to understand I would never belong. That night, stepping onto the porch, I saw my parents wrapped in one thin coat, trembling in the cold. My nails dug crescents into my palm until blood dotted skin. In that sting, a vow took shape. I would never let them suffer another second of humiliation. If this was their battlefield, then I was already in formation. Wind tore through the pines, needles scraping like sandpaper. Each gust made Mom's knees lock in pain. Dad leaned against the gatepost, breath ragged, smoke-like vapor drifting from his mouth like an SOS signal. Inside, jazz oozed through glass, crystal clinked like falling ice, laughter rolled over polished floors. Two worlds, divided by one door, but it might as well have been a frozen mountain. I pulled out my key ring. Metal clinked, the same sound as stripping a rifle in the dark. I pushed the key in, turned. Jammed, tried the spare. Then the one engraved home, room down for Dad, all slid useless. The lock had been changed, no notice, no word. "Maybe you've got the wrong lock," Mom whispered, her cracked hand fumbling for mine like reaching for a coal in winter. Dad pressed harder against the post, clutching his chest, shoulders quivering in a way I knew too well. I knocked 3 times, firm, even like a formation call. The sheer curtain fluttered. A shadow peeked, vanished. The door cracked open, golden light spilling like honey not meant for us. Genevieve stood framed, hair-high, pearls gleaming. Behind her, white orchids lined like a parade, guests drifting in tuxedos and silk gowns. "What is it, dear?" she purred. "I brought my parents," I answered in my command voice, clear, clipped. "We're coming in." She opened the door one finger's width, smiled thin as a paper cut. "Unfortunately, tonight's flow is very delicate. We can't disrupt it." "Why was the lock changed?" I asked flat. "Who authorized it?" My sister-in-law appeared beside her, bergamot chill rolling out. Smart lock, safety, you understand. Safety for who? I tilted so they could see Dad clutching his chest. His cough tore out, wet and heavy, like a dull saw cutting soaked wood. My voice dropped, sharp. Open. Genevieve didn't blink. She tilted her chin, weighing me like an exhibit. We're busy. Those two words hit colder than wind. I called my husband. Through the glass I saw him, phone buzzing in his pocket. He answered. What's wrong? Saxophone bleeding into his voice. Open the door. Don't make a scene there. I hung up. On the field, when radios fail, you move. I led my parents back to the car. Heat blasting, blankets tucked over Mom's knees, a thermal pressed into Dad's hands. His fingers shook, nails gray. I can take it, he whispered. I leaned close. You don't need to, I take it for you. Back at the porch, I pointed at the valet parking cars into a glittering barricade. Stop, clear 2 vehicle lengths for EMS. He stammered. But the event... Events don't outrank medevac protocol. I cut in. He scrambled on his radio. I knocked again, holding my military ID to the camera. If you don't open, I call military police for unlawful lock change on base housing and obstruction of medical access. Your camera is recording. Her mask cracked for half a second, not at me, but at the word report. Then the ice reformed. Don't dramatize. I'm not dramatizing, I'm documenting. A guest leaned in, wine raised. Parents, how sweet. He thought he was polite. My stare sent him back. My husband hurried up, tie perfect. Mom, 5 minutes. He turned to me, gentle tone. You're trying not to leave old people in the cold, I said. That's all. Genevieve sighed, like scolding a child. Guests will feel disturbed. Guests will feel humanity, I answered. Open the door. Her grip whitened on the frame, lashes trembling like a taut line. Finally, she stepped back. The lock clicked. The door opened. Warmth spilled out, smothered by orchid frost. I ran to the car. Let's go, Dad, Mom. Mom squeezed my hand. Don't fight. This isn't a fight, I smiled thin. It's procedure. Dad leaned on me. Weight strange, lighter from sickness, heavier from fatigue. We climbed the steps. A waiter slipped past, eyes meeting mine before dropping. Watch the rug edge, I warned Mom. She nodded, biting her lip. I gripped Dad's hand. He tried to lift his foot. A tiny grunt slipped out, almost swallowed by music. His hand slid from mine, rope through wet gloves. His body folded, knees giving. I pivoted, caught him with a medevac move, dragged a chair close, lowering him onto wood instead of floor. Mom dropped beside, clutching his shoulders, calling his name like a prayer. The room froze, music choked off. A glass shattered, shards sparkling uselessly. Someone gasped too loud. A woman yanked her gown away from the incident. A phone camera lifted, red light blinking. Lower it, I said flat. It fell. Blanket, warm water, I ordered a caterer. And call 911 if valet hasn't. He bolted. My husband stood 1 arm's length away, pale. Dad, you okay? He whispered. Clear the drive for EMS, I snapped. This isn't Q&A, it's coordination. Genevieve stood stone still. The pearl on her ear quivered. Her lips parted, maybe to say sorry, but what came was, I'll tell them to collect the glasses. I'll keep the man, you keep the glasses or your face. Your choice, I said, eyes steady. Mom pressed her palm to Dad's chest, lips counting silent beats. I crouched, feeling faint breath on my wrist. You're here, Dad, I whispered. Slow, 2, 3, my free hand checked his pulse, thin as fishing line. My brain clicked through, airway, breathing, circulation. Not a battlefield, but a real casualty. Outside, sirens split the night, red and blue flaring through glass like a storm. Clear the way, valet shouted. Sedans screeched aside, dirt-spraying gowns. Engines growled, wind whipped, the soundtrack of reality. 2 EMTs stormed in, boots heavy. I raised my arm. Here, this way. My voice slid into command like muscle memory. Male, late 60s, chest discomfort, near syncope at threshold, cold exposure. They nodded, gear slamming down, sensors clipped, cuff pumping. One EMT asked history. I rattled it off like a report. Cabbed once, daily meds, photo of prescriptions on my phone. I glanced up, guests wore masks of controlled concern. One even smiled at the EMTs as if politeness could heal. My sister-in-law whispered, "He should have stayed in the car, more elegant." I shot back low, "Elegance doesn't save lives." "Exit," EMT asked. "Front door clear, driveway open," I replied. They nodded, braced Dad's wrist, slid the stretcher over the rug that almost tripped him. I leaned to Mom. "I'm coming, hold his hand." She nodded, tears falling silent as dew. I gripped her hand a second, 1 second of softness allowed. The stretcher rolled. Wheels hissed across wood, sounding like a runway. My fingers brushed the oak scrap on my key ring. Beeswax flashed through orchid frost. I understood they could change locks, change portraits, change scents. But my definition of home, my people inside, warm, alive, was untouchable. The stretcher crossed the door. Night air slammed in, smelling of diesel and wet grass. I passed Genevieve. For the first time, her face lagged behind her mask. "Tonight was supposed to be perfect," she whispered, like confessing to the wall. "Perfect," I said, "is not leaving anyone outside." Quiet, but the truth carries its own volume. I followed the stretcher out. Sirens spun red and blue across the driveway like a frantic compass. But my direction was clear. Get Dad through the door onto the rig to the hospital. The rest, honor, shame, whispers, could wait. I climbed in with Mom, sliding the ambulance door shut. Before it sealed, I caught one last look. The living room glowing, orchids white, guests flawless, but a crack had split across their perfect picture. The door closed. Sirens screamed straight and thin as wire. I held Mom's hand, my other on Dad's pulse, counting. 2, 3, 4, I breathed deep. My thumb pressed the oak scrap. It warmed like a heartbeat. An order delivered, hold the house, hold the people. Inside the ambulance, the LED light washed Dad's face in pale blue. The monitor beeped steady, each sound like a needle pricking my fear and leaving it hanging. One EMT read vitals, the other slipped on oxygen, clipped SpO2 to his finger. I gripped his wrist, pulse weak and flickering like a signal cutting in and out. Mom sat across, hands locked, lips whispering a prayer so short I mouthed it with her. The rig swerved hard. My head hit the wall sharp, like a shot of black coffee. My brain switched into mission mode. Time of collapse, location, outside temp, witnesses, doorbell video, license plates, EMT names, case number. Stored clean like a route map. The EMT asked history. I rattled. Bypass last year, daily meds, fatigue climbing stairs, cold exposure tonight. My voice flat, though my hand trembled on Dad's brittle wrist, pulse thin as beeswax, string on the oak scrap hanging from my keys. The doors slid open. Antiseptic air rushed in sharp but safe. The stretcher wheels hissed across vinyl, ceiling lights racing past like stars. A nurse asked name, date of birth. I answered crisp like a password. They pulled him into a curtained bay. The green divider snapped shut. I froze one beat, like a soldier dropping a stretcher after a mud run, heart still sprinting. Mom clutched my hand, ice cold. I steered her to plastic chairs under a buzzing fluorescent. The vending machine groaned in the corner, selling coffee nobody finished. I fed coins, handed Mom a paper cup. She cradled it like a warm bird. Tears filled, wiped away with the back of her hand. If only I'd told him to stay home tonight. I shook my head. No one should wait outside my house for somebody else's idea of flow. Her eyes swollen, but beneath them burned the endurance of someone who's weathered 100 winters. My phone buzzed nonstop. The in-laws chat blew up. Everyone panicked at the ambulance. Next time, don't bring people without notice. Entrance floor is dirty, already cleaned. That word dirty made their house feel like another planet. My husband called. I let it ring once before picking up. "How's Dad?" His voice low, muffled by background chatter. "Under evaluation." "Can you come back? It's chaos here, Mom." "No," I cut him off. "You handle your chaos. I'll handle my people." He paused. "You embarrassed everyone in front of guests." "Embarrassed?" I laughed dry, like a candle sputtering. "Embarrassed is my father collapsing on my doorstep. I didn't mean Mom just wanted perfect. Perfect is not leaving anyone outside, period." I hung up. Immediately, Genevieve called. I didn't let her start. "My doorbell camera has the video, catering company, timeline, your words, cars blocking access. Tomorrow morning I file an incident report with base housing. I'll attach evidence, witnesses. If any file disappears, I have cloud and USB backups." Silence. I cut her soft tone off. "Don't worry about image. Worry about conduct. Tonight has a record." I hung up. My temples throbbed, shoulders stiff as wood. I pulled a notepad, wrote the timeline. 2047 lock change found. 2053 denied entry. 2101 called 911. 2105 door opened. 2106 Dad collapsed. 2112 EMT arrived. Names: catering manager, valet, plates of blocked cars. My handwriting sharp like map coordinates. A young doctor pulled back the curtain, glasses flashing. "He's under close watch. EKG shows stress irregularities, likely cold and strain. We're warming him Roman 4 fluids, monitoring enzymes. For now, he's stable." I nodded, thanked him. Mom touched his sleeve, whispered, "Thank you," with trembling lips, sealing them shut before tears could spill. The waiting room fell into its soundtrack. TV weather report, shuffling slippers, a child's cry fading, vending machine clunk. I closed my eyes, remembered the barracks courtyard, late-night BBQs, smoke in our hair, soldiers trading near misses, all because a door opened or didn't. In uniform, home meant one thing, a door opening when you knocked. Tonight I saw the opposite at my own house. Phone buzzed again. Johnson, my private. "Ma'am, EMT buddy filled me in. Anything you need, text. I've got dash cam footage, caught the line of cars." My chest clenched. "Save it, send tomorrow, thanks." I texted Ramirez, our admin sergeant, queen of paperwork. "Need complaint form for base housing, unauthorized lock change plus obstruction of EMS access." She sent back a checklist, link attached. Remember, facts, not fury. I smiled tight, like a steadying hand on my shoulder. My husband texted. "Mom wants to post in neighborhood group. Small health incident tonight, apologies for inconvenience." I reread, "Small health incident, saw Dad slipping again." I typed back, "If you post, post truth." Elderly guest collapsed after cold exposure outside a locked door changed for flow. Silence. Then, "You're too extreme." I dropped the phone, exhaled, let anger pass like a storm cloud. Not words now. Plans. I drew 3 columns in my notebook, ops style. Evidence. Doorbell video, cloud plus USB. Johnson's dash cam, 911 call log, EMT bill, witnesses, caterer, staff, valet, photos of blocked cars. Process. File incident report with housing and security. Site violation. Request formal reprimand for unauthorized lock change. CCJAG if needed. Boundaries. Revoke in-laws smart lock access. Reclaim spares. Parents enter anytime. This is my house. Snapped a pic, emailed it to myself titled, "After Action Front Door." Note attached, "Never leave anyone outside." A nurse appeared. "You can visit briefly." We followed antiseptic halls. Dad lay back, color better, oxygen steady. His eyes softened when he saw us. I held his hand, warmer now, pulse stronger. Mom clung to the blanket like an anchor. "Sorry," he whispered. I shook my head. No one apologizes for being let inside. His smile crooked, scar twitching. "You stand tall just like pinning day." I lowered my forehead to his hand for 1 second. You taught me. Back in the waiting area, my husband stood holding a paper coffee. Hospital light exposed every crease he'd tried to iron flat. Did you go in? I asked. He shook his head. Mom said later she's afraid of being seen. I scoffed. No guests here, only staff and patients. If you're scared, leave. He opened his mouth, closed it. I'm sorry. Words weak like a slip of paper in a storm, I nodded, not forgiving, not denying, postponed. My phone buzzed, unusual activity on smart lock account. Someone had switched admin at 22:14. I barked a laugh while Dad lay under monitors. Someone still schemed over locks. I stripped their access in 3 taps, enabled 2FA, reset Wi-Fi, wrote the code on paper for Mom alone. Factory reset every automation Genevieve had set. A click in my mind. Door reclaimed. I called base housing. Left a voicemail in my officer's voice. This is Captain, quarters at. Report, unauthorized lock change, EMS obstruction, video attached. Written report follows. Sent the email with files. CC'd security. Shoulders eased. Genevieve texted, let's talk civilly tomorrow. Don't turn this into paperwork. It was for safety. You don't understand society. I didn't reply. I opened the album front door. Thumbnails, me, my parents, the closed door, Genevieve's hand blocking, cars in a row. No captions, no need. The truth sharp enough. Doctor returned. Dad would stay overnight. If stable, discharge tomorrow. Avoid cold, avoid stress, meds on schedule. Mom exhaled relief. I signed the forms, accepted the kit, logged every helper's name. Tomorrow I'd print a thank you note. Amid cold, I wanted warmth given back. My husband asked quietly, what now? Tonight, stay with Mom. I said, tomorrow, work. And the house. I go back, reset everything to my definition of home, and I put boundaries in writing. He nodded, like a man saluting an order he didn't like but knew was lawful. I'll tell Mom. No talk, act, move her car from EMS lanes, surrender her keys, be ready for the report. My eyes flicked to the hospital TV, weather alert, check on elderly neighbors. I smiled bitter. What TV said as kindness my family had to learn through paperwork. Near midnight, the waiting room emptied. Only vents hummed, nurses' shoes whispering. I spread my field jacket over Mom, tucked her pillow. She smiled faint. Warm like the day they handed you to me. I laughed, warmth real this time. Tomorrow, when Dad's home, we'll make cider, extra cinnamon. She nodded, lids heavy. I leaned back, wrote 4 lines in bold like a campaign header. Home equals parents walk in, no barrier. Locks equals protect, not control. Image human, no one left outside. I drew an arrow, wrote P8 execute. Phone buzzed once more. Notification, Genevieve attempted access, blocked. I dismissed it. Peace settled, not victory, clarity. I'd chosen my side, the side of warm hands, open doors, chairs pulled close. I tucked Mom in. Dad's steady breath echoed from the ward. I closed my eyes. Mission tarp down. Tomorrow I rebuild the house true north, because I'm a soldier. And soldiers don't need to shout, we just open doors. Morning light in the hospital wasn't golden. It was flat, sterile, awake. Dad slept steady under his oxygen tube. Mom dozed in a plastic chair. I washed my face in a porcelain sink, looked in the mirror and saw a woman with swollen eyes but a gaze drawn tight as wire. I opened my notebook after action front door and checked a box. Dad stable, 24H observation, avoid stress/cold. Then added, deploy, file report, revoke access, restore house, retrieve table. I slid into a corner chair with my laptop. The evidence folder was packed. Doorbell video, Johnson's dash cam, 911 log, photos of blocked cars sent overnight. I laid them on a timeline, renamed each file like labeling ammo boxes. In the Army, battles are won in organization before they are fought. Here was no different. At 0832, I walked into base housing and security. The lobby smelled of coffee and printer toner. The duty officer was younger than me, cuff stripes green. I dropped the folder on his desk. Unauthorized lock change, obstruction of medical access, recorded words, blocked cars, named witnesses. I spoke in their language, events, evidence, clauses. He scanned like a pilot before takeoff. We'll open a case, ma'am. You'll get notice of investigation. Thank you for your precise record. Driving back, Genevieve's text stacked. Last night should have been perfect. You ruined it. I'll talk to housing. We'll resolve internally. And that rustic oak table doesn't belong back. It doesn't fit. I exhaled through my teeth. Some words need no reply, only forwarding to the file as historical footnotes. By noon, Dad stirred. Dreamed you were setting the table, he murmured. I smiled. Don't worry, tonight the house smells of cinnamon. Mom tugged his sleeve. Same gesture for 40 years, slow, gentle, sure. I watched compass needle locking, protect people, protect home. Leaving the hospital, I drove straight to base housing. The sign shimmered white. My door opened. No orchids. Floor smelled of cleanser, scars still raw but cleaner. I wiped every party automation Genevieve had set. Changed all passwords, set files to auto-backup both personal and unit safe mail, Ramirez taught me. Behind the breaker box, I taped a note. If system fails, spare key in steel box under step, kept by your daughter. A small line, but it glowed like a guard order. Then Dad's old pickup rolled in, oil fumes carrying Wake County dust. Johnson drove, Dad rode shotgun, Mom in back. EMT had cleared him. I ran out, opened the door, held my hand. Dad placed his warm palm on mine, faint smile. Door opened quick. My door, I said. No more conditions. Mom headed for the kitchen, pulling out my cast iron pot. I sliced apples, shook cinnamon, poured water. Warmth unfurled like a flag. In the living room where orchids once towered, I set Dad's black and white photo, age 21, beside the bench he built. His eyes no longer erased by concepts. I messaged the consignment manager. I'm retrieving the table today. He fumbled apologies about misfiled storage. I didn't need them. I needed the address. 3 hours later, the oak table lay in Dad's truck bed, wrapped in his wool blanket. My hand traced a new scratch, scarred but home. Let's go, I whispered. We carried it inside. Not we this time, but the three of us. Dad at the head, me at the foot, Mom with beeswax and cloth. The legs touched carpet with the sound of wheels hitting runway. As we polished, the doorbell rang. Genevieve and my husband. Cold perfume swept in. Her eyes landed on the photo, then the oak table, sitting proud like a declaration. We need to talk, she began, placing her leather bag like a lawsuit. I poured her water, wine hidden away. Talk. I spoke with housing, no need for paperwork, families should move on. Move on. I laughed low. No, I don't leave people outside, and I don't move on. I slid the yellow folder across, copy of the case. This isn't debate, it's process. My husband's voice small. If you want, Mom will apologize. I want accountability. 1, withdraw from house systems, no events. 2, cover Dad's medical costs from last night. 3, written apology to my parents, not to neighbors. 4, sign confirmation that moving the table was unauthorized. 5, no entry here without me until investigation closes. Genevieve scoffed. This is my son's house too. Yes, I said evenly. And my name's on the deed equally. My re-enlistment bonus paid for the roof. I pay taxes. I register guests. I open the door to the right people. Last night you turned a lock into a weapon. Today I turn it back into a tool. I set the keys on the table. The metal rang like punctuation. She glanced at my husband. He swallowed. If she does those things, I'll keep living, I said. Marriage, another discussion elsewhere. Not a bomb, a flag. Mom entered, beeswax cloth in hand, stood by the oak like it had always been hers. "Please sit," she told Genevieve softly. "But if you're tired, you can leave." Her courtesy was armor. Genevieve froze, half-step between in and out, then turned, heels striking wood without music to mask them. My husband lingered. He stared at Dad's photo longer than ever, maybe first time without concept in his lens. "I'll stay with Mom tonight," he said, to calm her. "Your call," I answered. He wanted to hug me. Didn't. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. I didn't say it's okay. I didn't say goodbye. I handed him a boundary sheet, 3 rules in bold. No events without me. No locks or systems changed without written consent. Parents use downstairs anytime, no notice. He nodded, just enough. Night fell. Mom told me to turn the radio on. Old country played, gravel voice singing of roads leading home. I stirred cider. Cinnamon bloomed. Dad sat at the table, traced the grain, smiled. "This surface holds glass rings real good. Try it." He set his cup down, lifted it. A circle of water glowed, not mess, proof of life. We watched it together, silent. Outside, some might call it untidy. Here it was home. Late, I stepped onto the porch. Looked down the dark road where last night ambulances had cut through, where sedans had blocked. Tonight, quiet, dry steps. Door open behind me, unlocked. My palm brushed the handle, cool, steady. I thought of the flow they worshipped, the process I obeyed. My flow now simple. My people knock, the door opens. My phone buzzed. Auto reply from housing. Case accepted, 7-10 days investigation, no gatherings allowed meantime. I forwarded to my husband. CC'd Genevieve. No note. Evidence speaks. Inside, I tucked the blanket around Dad, watched Mom slide a pillow under his back. Before lights out, I taped a note inside the door. No one left outside. Stepped back, read it. Eyes stung from cinnamon, from lamp glow, from relief. Tomorrow, maybe more reports, maybe lawyers, maybe a marriage cracking like a hairline split in the table's leg. But tonight, the battle ended with a single click. The sound of a door returned to those who belonged. I shut the light. The kitchen stayed warm. The table smelled of beeswax. And deep inside, a heartbeat finally stopped running.